ETH Warsaw with Paweł of the Oracle's Core Unit, who's actually the organizer of this event.
Yeah, one of the organizers.
One of the organizers, but how in the world did you do it, bro?
Oh, it was amazing. I really don't know how we did it, but we made it happen. And actually, the whole idea was conceived by people meeting in Lisbon. And in my opinion, it happened on the Maker Party. The Maker Party in Lisbon was crucial to having this idea, and then we went from there.
Yeah, and it seems like you have a bunch of people here. Who are some of the sponsors that you can name off the top of your head?
I'm so busy right now that I cannot name anyone, but I can read something. There's of course Maker, there's Aleph Zero, there's Nethermind, there's Golem, and many more. But really, like right now, I'm so busy that it's hard to name them.
All right, and do you expect to keep this going for the next few years?
Oh yeah, definitely. We want to go bigger. We want to go build a big community around this. We want more people in Poland to understand, and we want to also not only have like super technical talks about Ethereum. We want also beginner talks. So we want to bring in a lot of people from different industries, Web 2 to Web 3 onboarding. That's our mission.
That sounds awesome, man. Well, look, thank you for putting this together. We do have some speakers later today, right, from Maker?
Yeah, we have.
Who do we have, real quick?
We have Sam, and we have Nick from Chronicle, so the Oracle Core Unit.
Yeah.
And there's a panel with Nadia, I don't know, maybe Luana, but I don't remember.
Awesome. Well, here you heard it first, Paweł, Oracle's Core Unit. I know a lot of people don't know about Paweł, but this guy does a lot of awesome work, not only for the Oracle's team, but also behind the scenes to put together great events like this. So, yeah, man, hopefully we'll bring more of this to you guys who watch this show. And yeah, Paweł, thank you for being here, brother.
Yeah, thanks.
All right,
thanks
cheers.
A lot.
Rolling? All right, welcome to another happy hour chat of the Schuppi NL Pro Delegate Happy Hour. We don't have any drinks, unfortunately.
No beer, no whiskey. I'm a bit disappointed, Frank.
Yeah, sorry about that, but this is ETH Warsaw Special Edition. I have right now with me a man that needs no introduction. If you know this pretty face right here, then you know it's Juan from the SES Core Unit. Sustainable.
Consistent scaling.
There you go. SES, that's who I know them as. What's going on, Juan? What brings you out to ETH Warsaw?
You know, get the word out of Maker, make sure that people that we're still relevant, that people remember who we are, and that they use us, integrations, yeah, anything to help, and yeah, helping Maker to stay relevant.
And spread the word, right?
Yeah.
So what's going on with SES right now? Any updates you can give us? I know it's been quite the what's the best way to put it? The environment where obviously a lot of the core units are either doing some work, or folks don't know that they're doing work, or some of them have just been kind of waiting to see what direction the DAO is going to go. So I was wondering if you can kind of give the people an update of what SES has been doing lately.
Yeah, absolutely. So first to set up the context a bit, we need to remember that right now, first of all, there's the bear market, so a lot of pressure from the community to cut budget. And then the other thing that's happening is anything that has to do with regulation. So SES is focusing on, I would argue, 3 work streams right now. The first one is legal research. So we do have a couple of very talented guys focusing on what's coming, how we can help Maker survive the next wave of regulations, seeing what we need to do, and to try to protect contributors or even users from anything that could happen on that field. Then the other thing that's quite important is to see anything that has to do with the change management, or helping people find their ways on the new structure. So we're contributing on that as well. there's a lot of proposals that are coming from Rune, from Hasu, so how Maker should look in the future as a DAO. So we're helping on that workstream as well. And the third one is the dashboard that we hope to release very, very soon. Yeah. So it's a bit to provide delegates and pretty much anyone that wants to vote or have a say in Maker with a tool to have a visibility over everything that's happening. So those are the three things that SES is focused on right now.
Very cool, and the dashboard is something I know I've been waiting for quite a while, and I know you guys did a lot of work into designing it, and I believe there's like an alpha version right now that some of the team members have put together, and it's super interesting. Are we able to use it or not yet?
There have been some leaks. It is usable right now. I think they're doing like the very last fine tuning to release it in now, like September.
Cool.
I think it's going to be a little bit delayed because they were promising September the 1st, so I think that's today or tomorrow. But it should be very, very, very soon. I know that a lot of core units that they signed up to collaborate and be the first users to upload the data are there, so we're happy with the current progress. And yeah, we need to remember that it's not just a dashboard, it's more we did the API first so that anyone can plug in their own dashboards. So there is a front end that's being developed, but we'll also try to make the data available for anyone to process the way they want.
So eventually one day we could see the MetaDAOs using this too, right, if the Endgame gets adopted. But switching gears here, you recently proposed a budget financing proposal that, I kind of dug into it, and I know you presented it, I believe, in one of the calls with the delegates, I believe it was.
Yes.
Can you give us a little bit of the background and where that's going? Because I feel like it's kind of gotten lost in the shuffle with all the dramatic stuff that goes on in the forum.
A bit, yeah. No, we're preparing the answer. We got a lot of feedback in the forum, really, really good, and we're preparing a lot of the answers and the way we're thinking. And we want to keep pushing this idea to see where we can get. But again, for people that are not fully aware, the project-based budgeting is a way of flipping or we think that this will give token holders more power to direct the work. So right now, the way it works is that token holders are funding core units to do work. And then the core units are more or less independent. In which work they have to prioritize. They can kind of ask for input, but it's not really required. So token holders can choose to offboard them, but that's a little bit too drastic, too dramatic. It's not very healthy for the contributors. So we think that if we switch this to token holders funding work, and then the core units proposing how to do the work, we will find this way to give token holders more power over what's being done and where the DAO should contribute next. So that's a bit the idea. It's the proposals on the forum. So if you guys want to check it out,
yeah, we'll link it to this video. But I also want to kind of ask you, how does a core unit, you being a facilitator of SES, how does a core unit prepare if there is a pivot in the DAO, right? And as folks know right now, the pivot could be the end game. Assuming that pivot does occur, how does a team like SES prepare for that pivot? And how does a facilitator, how do you get your team ready to make sure you guys are ready and able to take that left path or right path?
So we'll need to go pretty much core unit by core unit, going through the whole list and see how it makes sense for each core unit to go where. But basically what we do is the simplest way is like, where do we want to be, and then where are we right now, how do we get there, and then prepare for that. I think that some core units are extremely ready. They are very, very small, they have very clear what they want to do or how they can contribute. In other cases, it's like a little bit less clear. It's like, okay, how could we contribute? How is this going to be shaped? Is the role still needed or not? If not, can they help in some other ways? So I think it's going to be challenging, but I think it's something that's very much needed to change the way we're doing things right now and to evolve into the next stage.
Very cool. Well, you guys heard it here first. I think we might be getting kicked out of the stage, but I want to thank you, Juan, for coming on the Schuppi NL Pro Delegate Happy Hour and spending a little bit of time, even though we had no beers, no alcohol, no coffee, Yeah, I see you with some yerba mate, so he has a drink. I don't. It's not my drink, but thank you, folks. Thank you, Juan.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. Cheers. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Schuppi and L Pro MakerDAO Happy Hour, Delegate Happy Hour, but today it's Meet the Makers with one of the most popular guys, in my opinion, from SES. I mean, maybe not the community, because you guys folks might not know who he is, or you might watch his Crowdcast show, and this is Retro, straight out of the streets of Chicago and Milwaukee. Big Chicago Bears fan, correct?
Absolutely. Unfortunately.
Unfortunately, no, it could be a good thing, man. It's better than New York Jets, so
True.
You got true. It's going to be a tough year for them. But Retro, tell us your background. I know that your real name, your Christian name is Retro, but you know, what's your background? You grew up in Milwaukee, and how did you find your way? You don't have to tell us about your background in crypto and why you got into it, but how did you find MakerDAO?
Yeah, I formerly organizational design and like process consultant, focused with like IT solutions. So you go into an organization, try to make it a little bit better by adding some new tools and maturing processes. And I noticed that there was a real lack of that in the Web3 space. So I found an internship through SES, applied, and just kind of worked my ass off to get to the opportunities that I can have today. So.
Got it. So you worked at a Fortune 500 company, is that right?
Not quite. No, not that big. It's smaller, but still global footprint.
Okay. And then you found out that there's a lot of inefficiencies in Web3. And how did you, was Maker something, because I can tell you from my experience, Maker resonated for me because of the finance. I like to consider myself and most of us finance geeks. Is that why it resonated with you?
No, it was more of the DAO aspect of it. So I think I first heard of Maker through a Coinbase quiz where they give you some free tokens. So ever since then it was on my radar. And then, like I said, I really wasn't looking for working for Maker specifically, but a job came across the newsletter as I was reading about how it went from a foundation to a decentralized organization. Just how you see the maturity of projects in Web3, I figured this would be the opportunity for me to come in and not having the coding experience to make an impact in the organization through governance.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you're the second one that got pulled in by that Coinbase. I forget what the hell it's called. Coinbase Earn.
Yeah.
And Peyton Rose might be the second one, actually. Believe it or not, I don't know if you know that. True story, folks. Peyton Rose got brought into this wonderful world that we know as MakerDAO by Coinbase. So I guess the Maker Foundation did a great job by spending the money on that, because that actually paid off. Now we have Retro here. And what brings you all the way from Milwaukee to Warsaw? What's going on? What are you up to here?
Juan was able to give me an opportunity to speak on a panel about Web3 trends. I believe it's being hosted by someone from Yahoo Finance, so it sounds like a really cool opportunity to
Yahoo Finance?
Yeah, definitely.
Folks, you heard it here first. MakerDAO is about to make some big headlines with Retro on stage, main stage with Yahoo Finance. That's huge. And what are you guys going to talk about? Web3, the inefficiencies, and
it's labeled as Web3 trends.
Trends.
I hit up Brian from Yahoo Finance and tried to get the questions ahead of time, but he hasn't sent them yet. So,
yes, okay.
We'll see what it's about.
I think you're going to be great, man. I think you're going to do really, really well, and we have other folks, obviously, that are going to be speaking here at ETH Warsaw. What do you think of the city so far compared to Chicago?
It's nice. I like it. It's not bad. It's not home, but
this is a true American right here. You won't quit. I actually think that I've been to Chicago a few times. I actually think it's you feel pretty safe here. I'm not saying your city's not safe, but it's pretty safe here. I think the people are very chill, right? So, but yeah, Chicago could be a little rough.
A lot of communities, I think, in the U.S. are going through a similar struggle. Maybe Chicago's a little bit higher on that spectrum of like violence and whatnot. I mean, let's let's not kid around, it is called Chirac in some settings.
Chirac.
Yeah, I don't know. It's sad to see if I'm being honest, but yeah.
And it's also very cold, so.
That too.
And I don't know how cold it gets out here in Warsaw, but we might have to ask your teammate Juan, who comes out here, I think, once in a while. But anyhow, speaking of Juan, SES, that's the core unit you represent. I know you do a lot of the crowdcast call. It's called again.
There's the focus on clutter onboarding call, core unit tools.
Core unit tools.
A couple of different.
And the Friday call is the.
That's just the status update.
The status update. SES status update. So you host all of them. You also do a lot of work for SES, and I would imagine you have to juggle a lot of things there. So can you give us an idea how you, as a core unit team member, are able to handle both things?
Yeah. So the videos are one of the first things that I got introduced to, just to help get used to the ecosystem. The first thing I did was template out a lot of the forum posts and the processes. So as different core units reach out saying, hey, we have this person that would like to present this, it's real templated and formatted already. The SES work is a lot more hands-on and problem solving, building net new things. So it's a good mix of just some routines and getting some exposure to the DAO, as well as really contributing on pushing the organization forward.
Got it. And right now the team is approximately somewhere between 8 to 10 individuals. How's everybody there doing, and how do you kind of work together? For example, say Lenka's working on one project with Jordan. How do you guys split? Do you work with that team, or is Lenka always kind of working on one project and you work with another project, maybe with Wouter? Can you give us an idea how you guys split the responsibilities?
So we have a organizational structure where there's like 3 main work streams, and depending on the interest or the skill set of a contributor, there's different ways that you can contribute to it. So my time is more spread across wrapping up incubation right now, as well as supporting like the change management projects that we have going on. But for the budget tool, I help with some of the budget questions that the tech guys may have, and then vice versa. As I am working through the project-based budgeting proposal right now, I reach out to them to try to get information that's organized and, again, just share across ideas. So it's an open environment where everybody posts updates. We have a daily stand-up as well as a weekly tactical where we get a lot more nitty-gritty about the work that we're doing. There's a Discord with private channels where the team is all collaborating. So it's a really open environment where if you can, again, make an impact or contribute in a certain way, you're free to do so.
And I think that's super interesting what you said there, that you guys have your own Discord channel where you guys are interacting with each other. And I think the maker community kind of doesn't see this, and at times you wonder if MKR token owners and community members are wondering if you guys aren't doing anything, but behind the scenes you're doing a hell of a lot of work. I also like to think that SES is one of the leading examples of budgeting, right? You guys have cut down on your budget a lot. But as far as keeping everybody in the core unit happy and making sure that they're doing their work, do you think it's important for every single core unit team member to be involved in the community, or not really? What's your opinion there? This is only your opinion.
Yeah, no. Personally speaking, I see a lot of value in it due to my work streams. I knew that I would assume that if I was more focused on building a tool or a platform, there would be good opportunities and conversations to be a part of, but otherwise there's a lot of noise that really doesn't impact your day-to-day. So it's fun to follow the soap opera, but if you're trying to be really impactful, you got to pick your spots and conversations to follow. But personally speaking, I don't think every contributor needs to be on the forum commenting all the time if that isn't something that they're interested in or comfortable with. Facilitators and other team leads, I think, can kind of take that information and speak on people's behalf, because it's a brutal environment sometimes out there, and yeah, you never know what's going
For sure, man. I mean, a good way to burn out pretty quick too, by the way. So,
that too.
So you kind of want to avoid that. So, I know you mentioned that if we can zoom out into the future, and let's say I'm a proponent of the Endgame, everybody knows that, right? We have Delegate, but let's say the Endgame comes into fruition. What are some of the inefficiencies that someone like you is already seeing? I mean, you're able to kind of see already what would we need to be kind of streamlined, where it becomes a more efficient thing, where the meta DAOs, right, assuming we get 7 meta DAOs, what do you think needs to be done there? How can it be handled? How can it be more efficient, streamlined? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I think the real secret that the Endgame and the MetaDAO framework will unlock is that framework. So if you look at MakerDAO and some other DAOs, it really is a green field. Like the initial MIP set defined the governance cycles and how the proposal framework works, but from there, like it's really unrestricted on what could come next. And an example of that would be like the real world finance prioritization MIP wars, where people were saying no other work could get done until this MIP is completed. So I think Endgame really represents the opportunity for the DAO to become more than what it is today and focus on its purpose. Because theoretically today somebody could write a MIP and ask to like open up a restaurant or start a TV show with some budget and name stadium. If we focus on making sure that the collateral is strong, the DAI is the best product that it can be, then we can push some of that craziness out into the meta DAOs. If you want to be a part of that, that's great, but it'll just allow people to segment their focus and energy in the areas that is best for them. It's really hard to be a generalist in this industry as well as at MakerDAO specifically in all the different moving pieces. So I think siloing those conversations would be beneficial, focusing the work in the right areas would be very beneficial, and it should lead to better collaboration, I think, at the end of the day as well, which is something that we're still trying to figure out long term.
Yeah, for sure. Folks, you heard it here first from Retro. I got to ask you a final question: beer, cocktail, or wine?
I'm a gin and tonic guy. So
gin and tonic guy, spoken like a true Chicagoan. All right, folks. Thanks again for watching a little bit of segment here of Meet the Maker. This is Retro SES Core Unit. Make sure you say hi to him when you go on one of his crowdcast calls and attend, because this guy is got a lot of brains up there. Giga brain.
Thanks, Rick.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Schuppi and L Pro MakerDAO Delegate Happy Hour. I have none other right now in front of me, well, on the side of me right here. Meet the Maker episode of the one and only, from L2B, Chris Kaczor. Did I pronounce it correctly?
Almost.
Almost.
Kaczor,
okay.
yes.
Kaczor. Okay. Kaczor. Yeah, the letters in Polish are pretty tricky, but I'm getting used to it. Dzień dobry, and welcome to the Schuppi and L Pro Happy Hour. You recently kind of pivoted from being very active in the MakerDAO community to now being a very strong vocal voice in the layer 2 ecosystem through a company that I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, you founded with a couple of folks. I believe one of them was Bartek, called L2B. First of all, how did you guys come up with that cool name? That is a super cool name. Love the name L2B. And second of all, like, what was the inspiration behind that? How did it happen?
Okay, so actually I think the story begins during MakerDAO's foundation days. We used to have this, I think, hackathons happening every quarter or something, and they were like company-wide hackathons. And on one of these hackathons, we created like a DAI on layer 2 on ZK Sync. It was ZK Sync back then, like a prototype with a nice wallet when you can sign up with your email, get like a private key in your browser and do transactions, and it was like super cheap and so on. Of course, it was only for testnets and so on. But this is how my journey with layer 2 started. And then quickly after that hackathon, I built some Dune dashboard to figure out the TVL of DAI on ZK Sync. And then a couple of months later, together with Bartek, we had this idea to just gather all this data under one site and also focus on like assessing the risks of different layer 2s and similar projects. And this is how L2B came to life. And with the name, I remember like one of the huge inspirations for L2B was DeFi Pulse. And the DeFi pulse, so we were like, okay, so maybe L2 beat, it can be L2 pulse, so maybe L2 beat, and it was even shorter, so it was great name, I think. And no one ever thought about changing this name, but I just put it as a sort of placeholder, but it stayed like this.
And it's L2beat.com, or?
Yes.
Okay, so you got that. And kind of give us a visual of what it looks like. I know that when I get on there, I get to see the TVL, the total value locked of every L2 chain that's in existence right now, that's running. Including some of the old schools like Loop Ring, which has been around forever, right? I remember using the Loop Ring, and it was, man, it was fun, but it was, I think I did it more for like, not the ability to trade, but also to learn how to go from layer 1 to layer 2. So shout out to Loop Ring if they ever get to watch this. Hopefully they will, because I got Chris here, but give us a visual of what the website looks like.
Yeah, so right now when you enter the website, you see like a huge graph stating how much funds are locked across all of different layer 2s. And like, TVL is not a perfect metric, but I think it gets people going, like it's interesting, like everyone is focused on this metric still. But when you see like a list of projects listed by the TVL, right, under this huge graph. But what's more interesting is the risk tab, which is like a second tab on the page, where you can actually see the risks associated with each technology. So, and this is where really L2beat shines. Like we research the architecture behind every single solution, and we try to come up with like some kind of scoring, or some kind of basically factual information on different metrics. Like for example, is the code upgradable? Like if it is upgradable, the whole infrastructure, the whole architecture could suddenly change, and I don't know, someone can steal funds. And users should be at least aware of these risks, right? Like we also talk about, like, is it optimistic rollup, is it Zk rollup, is it Validium, like, and all of these like different things we try to explain there. And also when you enter one of the
future layer 2 dev right there.
One of the projects, yeah. you can read more detailed risk assessment about all of these, and also you can see right now I think it's only TVL, but soon we're gonna add much more stats about, like, how many updates per day the sequencer or the rollup publishes on layer 1, how much gas does it spend, and so on and so on. So we're gonna dive more into stats of these different layers.
So the dashboard is gonna expand, it's gonna give the users the ability to see the gas cost, sequencer. I believe right now you can already see, which I like a lot, by the way, that if the bridge is fully decentralized, which I don't believe there's any right now, right, that are fully, but we'll get there.
There's
eventually.
one solution, but no one uses it. It's Fuel in version 1. Like it has perfect score, but it has no users.
And that's Fuel.
Yes.
Yeah, it's funny. I never heard of it. That's strange.
I mean, now they're working. So Fuel V1 was more like a prototype of their tech, of their idea behind tech, because they use the UTXO model similar to Bitcoin, but they're rollup at the same time. And now they're developing Fuel V2, which has smart contract support, which is going to be much more cooler. And I think it's great that they did this prototype to show that yes, you can construct a fully decentralized rollup, but there are no like token incentives, and like they're not promoting it at all, and that's why the TVL is so low.
Oh wow! Would there be a possibility of perhaps someone come in and fork it or use some of that code, or?
Yeah, so actually it's interesting because we did like this experiment when we tried, so it's an optimistic rollup, and optimistic rollups are only secure when there are like people using it and people validating the correctness of proofs, basically, because there has to exist at least one honest party that in case of incorrect state update it would like present a fraud proof. And that's why we have this 7 days delay for optimistic solutions, because you have this period of time when you can, prove that something was incorrect. And we did this experiment when we tried to push actually incorrect state update to steal all the funds. I think it's like $10, but we wanted to steal it to just prove the point that there is this security assumption. But turned out that few team actually still around the validators for this chain, and they found out that, I mean, like this mechanism is constructed in this way that if you try to present a fraud proof which is incorrect,
Yeah.
so no, actually we tried to basically create a state update, and they created a fraud proof saying that it's incorrect, and they slashed us, so we lost like I think half of an Ether just for doing that. But it was a great like PR stunt. I think like we made space a little bit more aware of this problem.
So just to make sure that I understood that correctly, the validators are still the field team. So would that be similar to what the Ren dark nodes, which are still centralized because the team is running most of them from the Ren bridge?
These validators are totally permissionless. Like you could run a validator, but probably you wouldn't because you don't use fuel and no one uses fuel.
Right.
So that's what was the idea. We thought that no one runs validators, but turned out that few teams still have.
Yeah, got it. Okay, let's zoom in into what everybody wants to hear about, the MakerDAO Teleport. It's a huge accomplishment in my opinion. It's right now actually it should be rolled out to Arbitrum and Optimism. The debt ceiling is only $1 million, right? You got to crawl, walk, and then eventually hopefully run. What are your thoughts there? What's exciting about Maker Teleport? Or some of the things that maybe some of the community might not know about the MakerDAO Teleport?
Yeah, so just for context, this was my last project while working for the DAO, Maker Teleport. So I guess I know some stuff about it. I think it's like really important primitive. The way I think about it is that with Maker, basically Maker has zero capital cost, and Maker could move potentially hundreds of millions of DAI, like do this fast withdrawal, do the teleport between domains, and basically with a very low cost. The only cost is risk, but the risk can be like contained in some way. And as you said, like this feature is going to start with low debt ceilings, and it's not going to be probably that popular. But once the debt ceilings are going to be increased, and once it gets integrated into many different DeFi, like not DeFi aggregators, but basically bridge aggregators. Yeah. So this is how I think about it. It's not like a user-facing product, it should be rather probably like a backbone of some nice UI, right? Like if someone wants to move a lot of DAI, just use that. And in fact, it could be also used to move a lot of USDC, for example, because with in the future, once we're gonna have MCD on different domains, you just deploy USDC PSM on Optimism, you have PSM on mainnet, and you can swap USDC to DAI, move that DAI quickly back to mainnet, and then swap again to USDC, right? Like you can build tools like this, and I think that's going to be really, really exciting.
It's super exciting. I mean, I can't wait for that. So right now you have a plethora of bridges, right? I can't even keep up. In your opinion, this is just your opinion, not a representation of L2B. What do you think is going to happen in that industry, the ecosystem, I should say, with bridges? Do you think there's going to be consolidation? Do you think that all these bridges are going to be native, they're going to eventually decentralize, and eventually someone like my parents will be able to use them, they won't even know they're using them, right, like HTTPS? What are your thoughts there? And again, it's just your opinion, not a representation of L2B.
Yeah, I mean, sure, there are good ideas to how to create decentralized bridges, and I think Maker is also one of the best designs out there. Like, it's not, we have the Oracle risks, but we have the Oracle risks anyway, right? So I think that's pretty great. And, honestly, I believe that there will be a future where, our parents don't even know that they use blockchain. Like, all this is gonna be abstracted away. They're just gonna be happy to use fast, decentralized currency, and maybe some of them will know that it's blockchain that's powering this tech. But I think the goal is not to make them aware. Like, it should just work. So totally, I believe that in future, we'll have this tech that abstracts all the technical details for normal people. And
one thing that I do want to remind people is that the Maker Teleport has what do you call that? Circuit breaker. I was going to say deadman switch, but a circuit breaker. Can you kind of walk us to why it's important to have a circuit breaker, and how can MKR token owners feel confident that this is hopefully going to save the day if it does need to be sort of like pushed?
Yeah, so I think this is a circuit breaker that will stop basically the ability to mint new DAI, right?
Yeah.
From that it's teleported. I'm double checking with you because this was added after I left, so I don't have the full picture. But basically, one of the problems, one of the challenges is that there's always like oracle risks, like oracles could potentially lie, right, and start printing out DAI up to the dead sea. Obviously, it only works up to the dead sea. But also there's it's a pretty complicated smart contract system, right? I think it's one of the more complicated deployments in MakerDAO in recent years.
Really?
Because it has so many different moving parts. It has like the layer 1 part, it has the layer 2 counterpart, and it has the whole Oracle system around it, right? Like another piece was the monitoring of the whole solution. Just know what's happening, right? Like if something would go wrong, you could not even notice it without proper tooling. So we needed to write all of that. And I think it's a pretty complicated tech, and that's why it makes sense to have a circuit breaker at least for some time in place, right?
No, yeah, I agree, and I'm glad that it's there. I always thought that maybe if, unfortunately, victims like Ronin, if they had something like that, maybe that could have helped. Even the wormhole from Solana, they could have also saved a hell of a lot of money, and I know it was covered by jump trading, but who wants to lose 300
the
million?
same with Nomad, right? Like Nomad was like an attack that happened across a couple of hours. If they had a way to stop it for some time, they would save a lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I want to talk about an interesting article, and I'll link it to the YouTube channel. It was by Joel Young. I don't know if you know him. But it was about grading bridges, and I think he did some work with another provider that reviews. These guys are very technical, that reviews bridges, and in this article he talks about a grading system where, similar to I think what you guys are using. Can you kind of walk us through how L2Beat is going to make the grading system more accurate, or if it does need more work, or do you believe that right now you kind of have the right path and you just need to add a little bit more to that grading so end users like myself will feel more comfortable using these bridges?
Yeah, so bridges are kind of complicated space with lots of different solutions. Like the spectrum it's pretty wide, and what we were trying to do at L2Beat is to come up with like a framework to assess risks associated with different architectures of the bridges, right? And this is something that we're working on. Like you can go to gov.l2beat.com to see all the discussions around that. But basically it focuses a lot on like providing like a different basically create a catalog of possible architectures for bridges, because some solutions are similar to each other, but they're different from other bridges, right? And it turns out that it's a really complicated problem. Like the different solutions out there are pretty wide and they are pretty different from each other. And we even, once we started diving into them, we found out very disturbing details that I don't want to talk about them now, but I'm sure that Bartek's gonna tweet about these findings soon. So you should follow him on Twitter, and I think that's gonna make community excited about some details regarding some of these bridges. Like they're not what you think they are. Let's put it like this.
You heard it here first. Bartek tweet storm incoming soon. Well, we're recording on September 1st, so if we have that tweet storm, we'll link it. But look, finally, first I want to thank you for being here with us and taking time out. I know this is a big weekend for you guys in Warsaw, the ETH community. But speaking of that, how is the Ethereum community out here in Warsaw?
Yeah, I mean, so I moved to Warsaw from Berlin 4 years ago because I heard that the Polish blockchain community is brewing, and I got to say that after a few years, like it's starting to look really good. I remember like a few years back, I was the one like trying to organize some events and so on. I've done nothing regarding this event, and people just fully self-organized, and you know, there's this young wave of people into blockchain, and they're like, you know, doing most of the heavy lifting, and like I think it's great that we have such a great conference here in Poland finally.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And we're here at Polytechnika. Do you see a lot of student bases that are getting into blockchain tech, or?
Yeah, so this is actually what also L2BT is trying to do. Like there are like, you know, a lot of companies that are in blockchain space in Warsaw, and they're doing like a lot of tech talks for students, and you know, trying to educate people, trying to also snipe some smart students, obviously. And yeah, you know, I think that students are like maybe it's not obvious, but they're really well prepared to dive into blockchain, because especially on like this better universities like Politechnika Warszawska or the university, Warsaw University, like they have the proper technical background, like, you know, computer science background, which is, it's funny that in most of the jobs they wouldn't even use that. Because, you know, when you build like web apps, you don't really need to know the details about the data structures or whatever. And in blockchain, it's totally the other way around. Like, you can use that knowledge, and it's like really great place for technical people, for people that are like, you know, thriving, learning the computer science itself. So yeah, I think like students are really well equipped, and they are like getting into blockchain for sure.
Very cool. So I guess we can see some graduates of Polytechnika one day working for MakerDAO and L2B. Huge excitement on my part, and I hope everyone out there, MakerDAO community, also is excited about the talent that's coming out of Warsaw, Poland. So thank you, brother. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Taking time out to talk to us, and we'll see you soon.
That was awesome. Situation right now. Maker can kind of be viewed now as sort of three components. There is the crypto native assets, and these are we focus on sort of high scale ones like ETH, Bitcoin, and staked ETH derivatives. So we've kind of gotten away from the smaller cap ERC20s and outsourced those to other protocols such as Aave and Compound, which leads to the second part, which is direct lending, which is the D3M model, which we basically just provide credit directly to other protocols, and then they can serve more specific niches, and we don't have to be the best at everything. And then the third piece is stablecoin. These are sort of, it's not just stablecoins, it's basically like USD reserves. This can be things like stablecoins, but it can also be like stuff like treasuries and bonds and stuff like that. These are things that are sort of USD-like, basically. So putting this all together, we have the D3M combined with Maker Teleport to give us multi-chain Maker. So this is sort of my view of what Maker is looking like more these days, where we have the master instance accounting connected to these slave instances, and basically the job of these is to just basically deal with settlement accounting and stuff like that. We then have these lines that are connected to all these protocols, and this could be on all the chains, and we provide credit to them via the D3M module. And then in between, we sort of have this DAI superhighway, Maker Teleport, that allows DAI to freely sort of go through all these chains, all without touching Ethereum, for sort of this very, very liquid cross-chain network. It's my view, as you can see here in this example, we have Aave on Optimism, Aave on Arbitrum. These are very isolated instances right now. it's my view that in the near future, we will not be selecting which network we want to use on, say, the Aave UI, where you're like, I'm on Ethereum or I'm on Optimism. Like, you know, users don't care about this, they just want to take out a loan. So this is sort of a temporary phase, and if we can sort of build this cross-chain infrastructure, it'll just be way nicer for the users. But what does this mean for your protocol? You can supercharge it. So DAI has really strong network effects. We're back the #1 decentralized stablecoin again with 7 billion outstanding. So if you want to tap into this, the D3M model is the way to go in my view. So basically improve your protocol, build an interface with the D3M, and then if you're successful, we can extend you a line of credit. This sort of breaks the previous model a little bit, like where to get stablecoins in your protocol, most protocols chose to do liquidity mining. So this gives you an alternative, basically, which is really nice, because getting stablecoins in your protocol is a very competitive market. So yeah, this is your toolkit for the multi-chain future. That's the way I'm Maker, and yeah, build the next awesome thing, and please connect with Maker. Thank you.
About security of this cross-chain or this cross-L2's DAI highway. Could you elaborate a bit more about security?
Yeah, so did you see this slide?
Yeah, maybe I haven't understood all the details, but what makes it safe when you, for example, transfer DAI from Optimism to Arbitrum or other L2, and the consensus mechanism is not broken between these L2s or...
Yes, so anytime we're extending a minting rights to a new chain, so in this example we've given 100 million to Optimism and Arbitrum, we feel they're very safe. If there's a mistake or something goes wrong with one of these chains, maker holders are on the hook for this. So we would basically take a loss to the amount of that 100 million that's in the escrow, as well as any teleports that we connected to it on other chains. So again, in this example, you can see in all the red, this is all the areas where we lose funds. The escrow on L1 with the local bridge, we lose 5 million there, and we would lose 1 million on each of these on the other chains in the teleport specifically, because we've extended a debt ceiling as well there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Implications and systemic risk over free-flowing DAI. So we'd love to kind of get your take there.
Yeah, sure. So what you're referring to, I'm assuming, is Rim sort of mentioned the idea of depegging DAI, free-floating it basically. From the US dollar. So that plan proposed, I think, is about at least 3 years out, from my understanding, if we are even going to do it at all. It's like more like a contingency plan. But if we were to do something like that, yes, we would need to plan ahead and figure out all the areas it will affect if we were to do it at all. But yeah, that's something we need to look deeply into, for sure.
Anyone else? I have the microphone. I'm coming to you. What's your name, buddy? Ben? Here you go, Ben.
Hello. So, what percentage of the treasury of Maker do you accept as risk? Obviously, there are different levels of risk that you take in each layer, but what's the percentage of the treasury that you accept?
Yeah, so this is not my call. Governance sort of decides this stuff, but my intuition on this stuff is that as things are in beta, untested, sort of very new, we keep it under the total treasury size such that any sort of tail risk event will not wipe us out and sort of risk like issuing a lot of Maker and stuff like that. But as we get more and more Lindy effect on, especially the L2s, and they can sort of fulfill their promise of approximating Ethereum security, that's we can kind of increase the debt ceilings gradually as we feel more and more comfortable with that. And I think that's kind of true for DeFi as a whole. Just the more and more time has gone by and there hasn't been like major issues, we can kind of feel safer and just raise them slowly.
Thank you.
Hi Sam, thanks for the presentation. Adrian from Salesforce. We work with MakerDAO and other DAOs. I wanted to ask more, just a question related to the existing bridges and their collaterals. And right now, so they have put efforts in making, incentivizing liquidity in different networks, and there has been creating a kind of, so many users just assume that the DAI is the DAI that they generate. And how, for those users, I mean, how would be easy enough just to put this new DAI on Aave, and I'm not even sure if the DAI that we see in Aave is from some of them or is really one generated by MakerDAO. So I just want to kind of see your thoughts on what will happen with those DAIs that exist out there.
Yeah, that's a really good point. There's kind of a bunch of different versions, and every token kind of has this issue where there's a whole bunch of different bridges, and so you get multiple versions of the same token on a bunch of chains, and it can be kind of confusing for end users. So we've strived with Arbitrum and Optimism initially to make sure that what we call canonical DAI, which is DAI that is under control of Maker governance, and thus we can attach it to multi-collateral DAI when we deploy that, is available and is the main DAI on these chains to prevent user confusion later on. But we can't do that everywhere. For example, Polygon POS has had DAI live for years now, before we were even sort of working on this. And there is what we call that wrap DAI, where it's just sort of a simple ERC20 wrapper. We've been sort of discussing plans for how to deal with this when we eventually do deploy Maker on something where the DAI already exists as wrap DAI. What we would probably do is, if we feel it's safe, we would offer a PSM-style module where you could just basically one-to-one swap this wrap DAI to canonical DAI once we deploy it, and then we can have some mechanism to basically unwind it over time. That's the idea.
Thanks.
Chronicle is that, one, it's completely decentralized, it's trustless, we don't, control any knobs or switches or admin powers, right? What you see is what you get, right? Two, right, again, community power, and we'll go into that in a little bit. Three, the architecture is completely blockchain agnostic. So it's not designed to be Ethereum specific. It's not even designed to be EVM specific. You can use Chronicle on any blockchain. It's permissionless, it's censorship resistant, and it's completely modular. And when we get into kind of the design of it, I'll show you what I mean by this modularity, which I think is a really, really critical kind of property for any infrastructure that kind of calls itself decentralized. So let's delve a bit into the weeds of how it works. This diagram might look a little bit intimidating, but I'm going to break it down and we'll walk through it kind of piece by piece. Fundamentally, what I want to start off with is this concept of a feed. So a feed is kind of think of them like a third-party agent, and what they do is they report, right? So a feed, might try to report the price of ETH, and they're basically going to grab Ethereum pricing data from a bunch of different places, and then sign that data and say, hey, I think ETH is priced this at this time, right? And so you don't want to have one feed, right? Because a feed, this third-party agent could be a malicious actor, right? They could give bad data, right? Or they could censor by not reporting any data at all. So what you really want is you want a whole kind of pool of feeds, like you want a whole network of feeds. And so this is kind of where we get into this community-powered kind of property, because it delves into who do you want running these feeds. Do you want someone like Coinbase running a feed? Do you want a bank running a feed? Do you want a staking service running a feed? Or do you want the community to run the feed? So going a bit lower into the technical aspects here, basically the complete flow from beginning to end is, right, a feed queries a bunch of data push them to the smart contract. So that's the whole flow. What's really good about this is you just have the Oracle update essentially happen in a single transaction, right? No matter how many feed updates you're trying to incorporate into a single Oracle update, right? It doesn't matter if there's 15, 100, or 1,000, right? It just takes one transaction to update. But the other thing that I want to emphasize about this architecture, right, is like 90% of it is off-chain, right? It's really just the last mile, right, where the transaction is going to the Oracle smart contract, right? That is, you know, here is the bridge to any blockchain, right? And that's what makes this architecture so blockchain agnostic. Is it's really just if you want to add support for Solana, for Avalanche, for Cosmos. Doesn't matter, right? You just have to have a smart contract on the other end, right? And just push that same transaction, right, to whatever blockchain you want. On the modularity side here, you probably see a bunch of different words. You don't know what they mean, like Gopher, Setzer, Ghost, Omnia, Scalaba, Liquid2P, Nebula, right? What are all these things? Well, we don't want to rely on a single tool or a single stack, right? Because if anything breaks, then the entire service, right, just stops, right? So you don't want to have just one tool for querying, data, right? You want to have redundancy, right? You want multiple tools, right? So we've basically built redundant tools that have different implementations, right? Different stacks that do the same thing. So if one tool fails, it's okay, right? You have a fallback, right? On the feed client side, right? You don't want every feed running the same client. What if there is a bug in your client? What if you introduce some kind of bug in your client in an update, right? Those of you who've been in the Ethereum scene for a while, right? May remember back in the day where you had the Geth and parity client. And, one day there was a huge bug in Geth, and every single Geth node froze. And it was only because the Ethereum network had client redundancy, right, in the parity client, where the parity client single-handedly, held up the entire Ethereum network while Geth, patched the bug and did a new release, and all the Geth nodes, right, updated to the patched version, right? So you want to have that same type of redundancy here, right, in terms of these kind of Oracle feed clients, that you want more than one client implementation. So right now we have two, but we'd like to just basically put out a spec so anyone else can just create their own implementation, right? And we can just keep building that diversification and redundancy into the protocol, right? Even on the transport layer side, right? So these gossip price messages, they're not just being pushed to one network; they're being pushed to a bunch of different ones, right? You don't want to rely on different instances of the same messaging protocol, right? Like, for example, libp2p, you don't want 5 instances of libp2p networks, because what if there's an exploit in libp2p, right, that can be abused, right? So you want to have this transport layer redundancy, right? So today we're using Scalaba libp2p, and in R&D we're looking at posting these to Twitter as well. That's going to be really cool, and we'll definitely explore some other options as well. So moving on here, this community aspect, right? I think this is what kind of sets us apart and makes us a little bit different from other Oracle kind of providers. Is we want this fundamental thesis. We want the fundamental thesis to basically be these are oracles that are for the community and powered by the community, right? So if you are a user, right, and you use the DYDX app, right, and you use MyCrypto, and you use 0x, right, to do DEX swaps, right, you use DeFi Saver to access your vault, right. These are applications that to you have a meaningful kind of trust, that you have a meaningful trust relationship with, and so those are really the same types of actors that make great feed because essentially what you're looking for in a feed is some kind of reputation, right? Something that conveys trust to another individual, right? And so something like Etherscan or Gitcoin, from a reputation aspect, has much more credibility than some staking service, that started 18 months ago, and just like, yeah, if we run a bunch of staking nodes for some protocol, we can make a bunch of money, right? I think that's a great way to get, to incentivize, feeds with maybe a good tech stack for, uptime, but it's not really how you incentivize good feeds with reputation, and that's really what we want. So Chronicle oracles are powered by this, all of the names that you see up here, and over time we're just going to continue to add more. So especially if you're out in the audience and you have a protocol and you would like to be a feed for Chronicle, please come find me after the presentation. Right, let's talk. Right, this is not a static set. Right, this is something that's meant to just grow over time. So I want to go a little bit into how Maker uses Chronicle. So on the one hand, right, you have the Maker protocol itself. Right, there's about a little over $8 billion worth of assets inside of the Maker protocol that are all being secured by Chronicle oracles. This actually makes us the second largest oracle provider by total value secured. Just after Gmach. And the second product that Chronicle oracles are being used is something called Maker Teleport. So Maker Teleport is something new that's coming up for Maker, and it's going to be coming out later this month, starting with Optimism and Arbitrum, but over time it's going to expand to a bunch of different chains. So I think next up is Starknet. And essentially what it is it's a bridge, right? But it's a very special kind of bridge. Typically, if you are, using the bridge to transfer DAI from one blockchain to another, what you have on this other chain is not really DAI, right? What you have is some kind of IOU that says, right, if you go back across the same bridge that you came from, you may be able to redeem that for real DAI. So what sets Maker Teleport apart is that all of a sudden it makes DAI on different chains completely fungible. Right? So a DAI on Ethereum is the same as a DAI on Optimism, is the same as a DAI on Arbitrum. Right? And so you don't require that, you can only cross the bridge when there's liquidity, on the other side of the bridge, for you to transfer into, right? There's no such thing as a liquidity crunch in this scenario because Maker, has the permissions, right, to mint DAI, via the protocol at will, right? So this is a bridge that one, you have no liquidity constraints, right? Two, you get real DAI, not some, fake IOU type of DAI. And three, what makes it special is you can avoid a lot of the limitations of some types of bridges. So for example, on optimistic rollups, you have a 1 week kind of withdrawal delay, right, for the whole fraud-proof period to kind of play out, right? So normally, if you wanted to transfer, some asset off of Optimism back to Ethereum, right, you'd have to wait a week, unless you're going to use a third-party bridge, which has liquidity constraints and fees, right, to avoid that. Well, with Maker Teleport, what Chronicle is basically doing is attesting that, the transfer was initiated on, say, Arbitrum or Optimism. This is a legitimate transfer. And because the Maker protocol already relies on the oracles just for broadcasting prices, there's no extra trust assumptions for it to, have those same kind of trust assumptions with respect to attestations of events that happen on other chains, right? So what happens under the hood is you as a user, you want to withdraw your DAI on Optimism. The oracles see that event, they attest that that event happened, and then on mainnet, just go and submit those attestations and just go and mint brand new DAI, right? And you get it instantly, right? And then after the 1 week period, right, Maker receives the DAI that you withdrew originally from Optimism, right? And then we burn that DAI to reach equilibrium with the newly minted DAI that you were issued a week earlier. So that leads me into how you can all use Chronicle. Just launched today. We deployed oracles on Optimism and Arbitrum for ETHUSD and BTC-USD. They're completely free to use, and so feel free to use them in your hacks or even in your protocols themselves. We are just going to be adding to this list on a rolling basis, so we're going to start including other chains, chains like Polygon, chains like StarkNet, zk-Sync, maybe even Avalanche. We're going to include other assets. So in particular, right, we would love to get the native asset for each chain up and running, right? So an Optimism oracle on Optimism, right, and the like. And so these are going to be completely free. They're going to be powered by the same community feeds that you saw up there, and they're basically going to be governed by Maker governance, right? So they're completely decentralized. We don't, there's no hidden switches or levers or administrative controls, right? We can't do anything. That's kind of it for me today. But I would encourage all of you to follow Chronicle Labs on Twitter, or if you want to get in touch with myself, I'm nomos_paradox on Twitter, or just reach out via email. If what you heard today is interesting to you and you want to come work with me and my team on Chronicle, we are hiring for a bunch of different roles, both technical and non-technical. We're looking for front-end engineers, full-stack engineers, back-end, smart contract DevOps. Even on the operations side, we're looking for an operations manager. On the marketing side, we're looking for marketing people. So please reach out, get in touch, and let's talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicholas. Are there any questions from the audience? Yes.
Hi. Whoa. There you go.
Hi, Nick. Frank Cruz, 3F Delegate. The $1 trillion question, what is the biggest difference between Chainlink and Chronicle? And is this something that could easily be copied and used in one of these EVM-compatible chains, such as Aurora, which is from Near, or Solana's future Neon EVM-compatible? So you just walk us through both scenarios of how does this differ from Chainlink and open source software, how this could be possibly monetized by someone else?
Sure. So, as I said earlier, right, the architecture is completely blockchain agnostic, right? So you can, if you want these oracles on another chain, right, there's really very little effort to get them running on these other chains, right? So, for example, the only kind of sticky thing, right, is if they don't support the EVM, right? That's still not the biggest deal, because all you need to do is just write an Oracle smart contract in whatever stack that they support, right? So you can go write a, Oracle smart contract in Rust for Solana, right? You can go write something for Near. You can go write something, for Cosmos and whatever. They actually support a couple different stacks now, right? But you can expand to all those chains very, very simply. But the easiest ones for sure are the ones that do support the EVM, because it's just copy-paste, right? In terms of what stops anyone else from just copying this, I mean, on the one hand, it's completely open source, how it should be. So yeah, anyone can just go and clone this and go run it on Near or some other blockchain unit. I think what you cannot copy though is the validator set, right? So just because you copied the code, it doesn't mean that you have people like Infura and EtherScan and DYDX and MyCrypto, right, providing the price, kind of these signed price messages that you want, right? So from a kind of trusted validator set point of view, like if you were to fork this, you would have to go on the really laborious task of like trying to get really high reputation entities, right, to participate. So that's where I kind of think the moat is. But I think what's cool about this approach, right, is that as you onboard more community feeds, right, it becomes much more difficult to manipulate the Oracle price, right? You would literally need collusion of the entire industry, to rug you, which really doesn't make any sense, right? So if you're DYDX and you use Chronicle oracles, why would you participate in an Oracle attack against the oracles that you use, right? So there's a really nice positive feedback loop there. Now to your first question, how is it different from something like Chainlink? I think the architectures are similar, but it's different in the sense that the types, if you look at the types of entities that run fees for them, they tend to just be professional staking services, right? That a lot of them that were just like newly created this year or 2 years ago. Personally, they don't really have a lot of reputation for me. I don't really trust, someone called Link Forest or Chainlink Nation or Sagefish or whatever, right? I do trust people like EtherScan because I've been using their tool forever, right? I do trust people like Infura. I've been using that forever, right? I do trust people like DeFi. So I think it's just a different approach in that respect. The other key point, differentiation I would make with Chainlink is the fact that Chainlink has a problem in that the link token is not a governance token. So they need someone to have admin power over the oracles, and so since it cannot be their token holders, because it's not a governance token, it's not. Right? So they just have a multi-sig that you don't know who the signers are, and you don't know if they're civil, and they have admin authority over every single chain core, right? Versus Chronicle has literally no admin authority over any oracle. Even if I don't like you using my oracle, like say if you're a Tornado Cash, we probably prefer if you didn't, you still can. Right? That's the point of decentralization.
Thank you.
Thank you. Another question.
If I understood correctly, Chronicle has been used by Maker products since the beginning of Maker.
Yeah, that's true.
But it's only being released now.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit about why that's the case? Like why it took so long to come out as a product?
I think because the original plan was never really to make it a product, right? It was really just like I said, the origin story was we needed something and it didn't exist, so we built it. And the focus has really been for us, right, on, we want to expand the Maker protocol, right? We want to, make DAI better, right? And it's only now that, and I agree with you, it's probably a little bit, later than it should have been. Only now do we have like the breathing room, right, and the resources to start going in a bunch of different directions. And I think Oracles is really promising. bunch of like Uniswap LP tokens. So I think we have like ETHUSDC, we have some Gelato LP tokens as well, right? So that's a liquidity management protocol on top of Uniswap v3, right? So there's DAI USDC collateral as well, and so it's kind of there's just a bunch of different stuff. Right? There's staked ETH, there's the Curve staked ETH LP token. So we've basically made oracles that have covered every single collateral type that Maker currently has, or even ones that it's had in the past that are offloaded.
Hi. I'm very curious about if there is any major protocol or any protocol that's want to use right now this oracle, and there are conversations in that regard.
There are a couple. In the past, for example, we've had, I don't know if you are familiar with TBTC, but it's basically a counterpart to RenBTC that took a little bit of a different implementation strategy. So we were kind of providing the ETHBTC oracle for that since its launch. We've also done oracles kind of for Augur in the past, back when Augur still had their active predictions market. We also have a lot of people who are using them for vaults management, right? So you could imagine a CD5 lender, for example, someone like a Nexo or a Celsius or a BlockFi, right? They have very, very large positions in Maker, right? And so what they will do is they will, lock up some of the assets that their customers don't know, right? And then they'll borrow DAI against it. But they need to actively manage those positions, right, to ensure that they're sufficiently collateralized and don't get liquidated, right? So they use the oracles of the Maker, right, to ensure that their collateralization is, sufficient. That one, they don't get, liquidated, but two, that they're also not leaving money on the table by being, too safe and basically losing yield because they're not capital efficient enough.
Okay, I had also a question related to the time in which these oracles are updated. I've seen things like if I say that I use it a lot, and they were saying, okay, next price will be this in 1 hour or something like that.
Sure.
Is that long still? Is there any change to that?
Yes and no. So if you look here, the price updates are feeding into a smart contract called the medianizer. And this is basically like a an oracle that updates in real time. What the Maker protocol uses is not actually the real-time value. The Maker protocol uses what we call the Oracle Security Module's value. And what the Oracle Security Module does is it basically delays prices by 1 hour. Right? And so Maker basically just wants like an extra kind of 1 hour delay on the price before it will use that price. You can choose to use the 1 hour delay price, or you can use the real-time price. But from the other partners that we've talked to, almost everyone wants to use the real-time price. So it's not really anything new. We've always had this medianizer that updates in real time. But from the interface side, what users have really seen usually is like, oh, it's an hour before the price updates, because it's been hidden behind this other proxy contract.
Thank you, Nicholas. That was the final question.